L'Amour Fan by David Smith. Music by Christina Sergi. Mojave Crossing, Part 10. Finishing up their last day of a week's family vacation in Kern River, California, Kevin, Maggie, and their 3 children are spending the last day in camp. They'd been camping out, staying in a large tent close to the river. The 5 of them had been fishing, swimming, and river rafting. They were enjoying their family camping experience. They decided to stay in camp for their last day, and they were enjoying relaxing in and next to the river. They'd just come back to shore after being in the water for over an hour. Junior's friend Matt had rejoined him, and they wanted to play with Junior's trucks and cars again. Blankets had been spread out on the sand, under a tree with chairs and a cooler keeping them in place. Kevin, Maggie, and the twins used towels to dry off with. Bottles of water were passed around and they sat down. They all watched the boys play for a few minutes, lost in their own thoughts. Then Trudy hands Kevin the Mojave Crossing paperback. He and Maggie exchanged looks and smiles, and Kevin opens the book to chapter 10. Tell Sackett had just been captured by the black-eyed witch woman and the bad guys. They were threatening Tell with ways they would torture him if he didn't take them to Ben Mandarin's pirate treasure. One of the bad guys was a cousin of Tell's. He didn't know him but had heard of him, and they also resembled each other. He was a Sackett. They had exchanged words several times, making empty threats to each other. Now he came riding along the trail. When he found out what they were planning for Tell, he tossed him a 6-gun and pulled out one of his own. Since he was a well-known gunfighter, the other men decided to leave. Dorinda Robiso also rode away. Now Tell and Nolan Sackett were partners heading for Prescott, Arizona. That ends the story, Kevin said. Did you like it? I thought the end would be more exciting, Maggie said. Yeah, Kevin agreed. It seemed like it was building up to a shootout. I'm glad Tell didn't get hurt, Stacy said. I like him. Me too, Trudy agreed. Do you want to hear this author's note? Kevin asked. I do, Maggie said, and the girls nodded their heads in agreement. Kevin begins to read. In L'Amour's author's note, L'Amour says, each water hole or spring, each valley, canyon, creek, or mountain, each store, gambling house, or hotel exists now or did at one time. L'Amour also mentions several other locations in early Los Angeles. Greek George's Adobe, where Tell got his horses back, was located near the intersection of Fountain Avenue and Kings Road, only a block from the Sunset Strip. L'Amour also mentions the Tejon Ranch, which Kevin and Maggie had seen a sign of on part of the drive. They knew it was a cattle ranch by the cowboy days, but nothing else. Several times they'd stopped at the Black Bear Diner for lunch or dinner on their way home. Some locations of the story are in the Joshua National Park, where Tell and Dorinda Robiso had traveled through on their way to Los Angeles. The next note is a biography of Louis L'Amour. Kevin reads the page to the twins and Maggie, then looks at Maggie. I'm thinking of my dad when I read this, Kevin said. Me too, Maggie agreed. Kevin's father had read a lot of L'Amour westerns, but this was the first L'Amour book Kevin had read. His dad had been gone a long time, but when Kevin heard L'Amour's name or saw a book somewhere, he thought of him. The circumstances of this trip had led him to reading it. When Maggie saw what he was reading, she was surprised. Then she decided she wanted to read it out loud the way they'd done in their college days. Then the girls had also joined in, although they just wanted to listen and not do any reading. Maggie had a similar situation. Her dad had read and collected L'Amour westerns. She had read a few herself while in high school. Maggie also had a stepfather who read L'Amour, rode horses, and thought of himself as a cowboy. He bought Maggie and her mother their first horses. They had gone riding with Maggie's father, but only on rented horses. Both of Maggie's mother's husbands had loved the image of cowboys. They both loved the spirit of the Wild West. Her father had been killed when she was 6. Her mother had married Tom when she was 11. Tom's grandfather had started a management company in the 1940s. He'd come to Hollywood to be a cowboy actor or stuntman. He had a few small roles in some of the early westerns and was thrown off or fell off many horses as a stuntman. There were a lot of things he didn't like about the way the horses were treated, or the actors, or any of the people that did all the work. To the directors and producers of the movies, most of the people were expendable. In starting the management company, Tom Sr. had been a carpenter back home in Montana. He used the money he'd made from the movies and invested it in real estate, then built houses to sell them. After his fourth house and 2 years into his arrival in Hollywood, he invested with 2 of his cowboy friends and they built a 30-unit apartment complex. The building was full within days of its opening. Most of the units were rented before it was completed. The housing situation in Los Angeles and Hollywood was in short supply. Within a few years, they'd expanded to 7 buildings and 4 houses, which they rented. They also built and sold some of the homes. Tom's father, Tom Jr., had expanded the company into an empire. Maggie's stepfather, Tom III, had grown up in luxury. The family had never forgotten their cowboy roots and lived on a ranch in Mandeville Canyon in the Santa Monica Mountains. Before he was Maggie's stepfather, Tom had been married. He and his wife lived in a smaller ranch in Tarzana in the San Fernando Valley. Their marriage had lasted 3 years and they divorced. 2 years later, he met Maggie's mother at a grocery store. They met in the avocado section and got into a conversation about guacamole. They each swore they had the best recipes and decided to get together to show each other how they prepared it. They'd been very happy until Tom had been killed by a rattlesnake bite while hiking in the mountains. Maggie's mother was a lawyer. Before her and Tom married, they'd worked together in his company, then became partners. Maggie began learning the business while still in high school. When she met Kevin in college, he also became involved. They were very successful and wealthy. "I guess that's why I never wanted to read any of his books," Kevin said. "It does bring back a lot of memories. Actually, they're good memories." "I remember my dad and Tom seemed to be always reading one of his books," Maggie said. "Some of them they read more than once." The twins were watching their mother getting emotional. They knew she was going to cry. She got very sensitive when they talked about their grandfathers. They'd never met either one, but had heard plenty of stories and seen lots of pictures of them. When the family was together with the grandmothers, many times they would reminisce about the good times they'd had. Maggie would almost always cry, and Kevin was always there to comfort her. He missed his dad and would get emotional, but they never seen him cry. Each of the 3 children had learned to ride very young and had seen pictures of themselves on horses in their parents' arms when they were babies and as they grew. They each had their own horses and rode as much as possible. Their grandmothers were also horse lovers, and each of them had a horse. They all rode together at least once a week. It was getting late in the afternoon, so they decided to go for a last swim. Except for Junior and Matt, they were having too much fun. Kevin decided they could keep an eye on Junior from the water, and the 4 of them got back into the river. After 20 minutes, it was time to go back to camp and have an early dinner. They could also start packing some of the things they wouldn't need again. Matt helped to carry the chairs, cooler, blankets and towels, the water toys, and Junior's toys to camp, and he and Junior said their goodbyes. "We don't have much food left," Maggie announced. "There's some fruit and a loaf of bread and peanut butter. How does that sound for our last meal?" Kevin laughed. "That'll be fine. We can have breakfast in Kernville before we head for home." By the time they finished dinner, it was almost dark. They sat at the picnic table talking. The kids were all anxious to see their pets. They'd missed them all week. Junior fell asleep against Maggie. She put him to bed. Then they were busy for a while letting air out of the water toys and packing various things back into the van. It was 9 o'clock when they decided it was time for bed. They wanted to get an early start in the morning. The end.